Well, my theory of life is it's all bound down to your personality rather than intelligence. And so I'm whatever I am, but I'm a very friendly person. I always have been. It's no effort whatsoever. And like what happened yesterday was completely normal for me, whereby I got a lift in a car, got out, and this chap laid in the doorway. So I automatically went across to him and asked if he was all right. And he said, no. So I said, are you poorly? He said, my heart's in half. So I said, oh dear. I said, are you drunk? He said, yes. Oh dear me. So with that, I went and got him some food, which was totally normal for me. So my happiness is to think I've helped somebody else. And my sadness is if I've screwed up big time and missed an opportunity when I could have been helpful and didn't manage to do it. And so very often I don't even know the person. I was in London crossing a bridge with my mother, and this lady came across in the crowd and said, when she got next to me, "You won't have her forever," and kept on walking. And I was so embarrassed and ashamed, and my face looks, I must have been, I love my mum enormously, but I must have looked really fed up. And that the lady said, "You won't have her forever," and just kept on walking. And I thought that was really helpful, and I've never forgotten it. And I would love to thank her, but there's no means of doing so. So other times it's like serenity, like when I was in Japan, and my last night before I sailed to Hong Kong, and it was dusk, and I was swinging on a swing, a child swinging in the playground, just enjoying it with the sunset and swinging in the swing. And that was just pure happiness because I just enjoyed myself at watching the Olympic Games in 1964, which was in Tokyo, and then was on my way elsewhere. So, in other words, I'm surrounded by happiness. I turn everything into happy. And once I was poorly, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity to realize what it's like for people who are in pain all the time, whereas for me, it's only temporary. And so I turn every negative into a positive, but that's me. I don't choose to do it. It's just my personality. End of.
So we're talking about acts of kindness, and I mentioned Good Gym, which I'm a part of, which is a way of creating community and doing good deeds. So we go out and we run or cycle to get to a good deed, and there's about 30, 50 of us sometimes who get together to just do an act of kindness and do a good deed either for schools, charities, anyone who really needs the help. One of the things we do as well is social visits, and that's my favorite part. So I met a lovely lady who was socially isolated, and she's 90 years old. And my relationship with her is just amazing. I get to visit her at least once a week. And and I find that that kind of intergenerational thing is really important. And I don't have parents in this country or anything, so it kind of gives me that sense of having somebody who's older than me to pass things down to me. So we both get something out of it. So I don't know how much of that is an act of kindness because we're both getting something out of it. But we did talk about empathy and why that's really important. But I do think a sense of community is really, really important. And whether we just do it to create that sense of community and that's our way of doing kindness, as long as everybody's out there doing that kindness, that's what matters to me.
So kindness, I think it's a very underrated um, attribute. I wish there was more kindness in the world. I think the world would be a much better place if more people led with kindness first rather than fear. I think there's a lot of fear in the world, particularly right now. And I think if people led with kindness and empathy, we would all be a lot happier and a lot safer. And I do think it is very much interwoven with empathy. So yes, I think it's really important. I think it's an important part of creating community. And as I said before, I don't think it really matters if you like someone or not. I think you can still be kind and be empathetic towards them, even if you don't like them or even know them, because I think you can be kind to people you don't know. So the liking isn't a factor in that situation. I think it links with compassion, and just valuing human beings for just seeing their value in them existing in the world and not feeling like they have to, their value is tied to something they do, or money, earning money or anything like that. I think we have value just as for existing in the world. So I probably have more thoughts, but I'll probably leave it there. Be kind.
Kindness, trying to think of acts of kindness, takes me back to the late 60s, early 70s, start of the women's movement, when in London we were setting up a radical feminist group, and the group was quite large, and we separated out. Some of us weren't comfortable because some of the women were married to or had partners who were very political men, and we felt it was their men's voice speaking some of the time. So we separated into women who weren't with men, radical feminist group, because we felt we needed to work on our own without men's influence. And we became quite a small, very close group. And kindness was a very great part of it. And we were setting up, we were talking about running a health centre, some sort of health centre. And at this time, this was 1971, I think, abortion became legal in America, and a group of women in California set up a feminist health centre. And I corresponded with them, getting ideas from them. And they invited me to go out there to work with them. And members of our group, they raised the money for me because I didn't have enough to fly out of California. At that time, we weren't jetting all over the place. People didn't have that sort of money. But the group got the money together for me to go out to Canada, to California rather, to LA. And while I was out there, I was on a 3-month visa, and the visa ran out. And they wanted me to stay on longer. And they put forward to the immigration that I should have an extension of my visa because of the work I was doing. And that was refused. Women's health centres weren't acknowledged at the time. And so no visa, I was going to have to go back. And to me, having flown halfway around the world to do this, I was quite taken by the whole difference in vegetation and everything. I hadn't had a chance to see anything because I'd been working so hard in the centre. And I was determined I wasn't ready to go back. But a Mexican woman I spoke to in immigration said, if you want to stay, you've either got to do an education course or get married. And I didn't have money to do an education course. And when I went back to the centre, a woman who'd come through from the Midwest, from Iowa City, who's a really, really kind person, she said to me, come back, if you come back with us to Iowa City, I have a friend who would marry you. It was her a close friend. Had been her partner, and they'd broken up. And he was an activist, and he was very keen to support anything he could. She said he doesn't want to get married anytime anyway, so he'd be happy about that. So I went through with her to Iowa City, and her good friend, married me. I took him to a nice clean parlour to say thank you. And in the meanwhile, she'd organised a party for me to raise, because I'd lost my possessions in leaving California. They were supposed to follow on a different flight, and they never came. And we were in deep snow, a very different climate to California. And so she'd organised a party for me, and everybody brought an item of thick winter clothing. And so I was totally kitted out. When I did eventually get back to England, I went and dissolved the marriage. It was never consummated, so that he could get on with his life. But it was just there was just so much kindness in the women's movement, and I realise now we were a family really. Which where kindness pours out in a family. It's a big security. That's it.
Well, acts of kindness, sometimes they can be spontaneous and sometimes they can be organized. And I always think it's easiest to talk about something when you use a particular incident, because otherwise the subject is so vast and then it becomes lost in all the different side roads. So I've talked about this before because it was an act of kindness which has to do with me being here, which is that my father, as I've told on other occasions, had to escape from the Nazis who had occupied or were about to close the borders of his mother country, which was the then Czechoslovakia. So my father he managed to get out just in time. He was on a train, but the problem is that as a Jew, he wasn't supposed to be on public transport traveling through Germany, which he had to do to get to where he was fleeing to, which was England. And a little boy had been entrusted to him. So he was sitting in the train with this little boy who was also been sent, hopefully, to safety. And the guard came to check the tickets. And this was a dangerous moment because if my father's passport was stamped with a J for Jew, and my father said the guard came in, looked at my father with this little boy and walked off. So the guard, in that moment, I imagine somehow that his heart went out, perhaps to the little boy, because he ignored my father traveling illegally, and maybe the little boy was too. They were able to reach safety, and that was an act of kindness, and that's the finish of my story.
I would say since joining Spark, I've just been welcomed by everyone on the team here. So I feel kindness every single day at work here, because we've got such a lovely group of people who all work together really well and help each other every day.
Lovely. Right, this is a travel log of Sue's travels through the world and the kindnesses she's met with. Starting actually with childhood, and my family was I was very lucky to have kind parents. For example, my father took me up to the top of a pyramid in Egypt when we were on our way back from India, and I was only 9 years old. Now, that is very kind of somebody to help a little kid to ascend a pyramid, and my mum was down on the ground and took a photo of these two little dots at the top of this pyramid. He was very kind to his men.
he was born in Leeds, and both my mum and dad were born in Leeds, in the back streets of Leeds. And he was always a socialist. Even when he joined the RAF and was an officer, he was the only socialist amidst the officers in the officers' mess, and he looked after his men. He cared about his men because he empathized and came from the same kind of background. And that's where kindness can flourish and grow. It's because if you stand in the shoes and know where the other person is coming from, kindness is then natural. So, and he was very kind to his kids and so on. And he was an excellent raconteur and would tell stories like me until the cows come home. And was very supportive of his kids. And that means that I had the foundation to springboard off into my travels and my emigration to New Zealand into the 70s and so on, because I always knew that they were there, my parents were there for me, and their support and their kindness when I did things that were outrageous or whatever, they were always supportive, and that's kindness. Anyway, so I want to recognize that. And then traveling, I want to recognize also the kindness of strangers, because you get on a boat in Singapore and you travel across the ocean, and it's flinging its swimming pool out. It's rocking, it hasn't got any stabilizers, and it's rocking, and the passengers are all sick as little dogs on this journey to New Zealand. But the kindness of everybody in adversity was noticeable, and also the kindness of when you get to a new country and you're land in Perth, and you say, I'm on my way to New Zealand, and then you get chatting to people. And then you get on a train and you go across the Nullarbor Desert, and there's nothing to be seen from hundreds of miles upon miles. And you're traveling with this stranger in your cabin, and you have to sleep in your bunk beds in your cabin with this stranger. And you get to know people, and they look after, and you look after each other because you're strangers in this strange land. And so anyway, you come out of and you go to New Zealand, and then you're on a whole new kindness trip, because you meet Tup and Henry was the secretary to the Treasury, and Tup was sponsored the Modern Dance Company of New Zealand, and I happened to go on a Commedia dell'arte course with Tup. And then she said, after we'd finished doing that, she said, do you want to be the business manager of this new modern dance company that I'm bringing to New Zealand? And that set me off on another adventure, becoming the tour manager of the Modern Dance Company of New Zealand. And when that had finished, I went back to Tup and Henry's house and lived in their basement suite while I did all the accounts and everything. And then I went off and was an actor, and then did this and that and the other. But it's the kindness of strangers that you hear about, and it really is important to know that you can go on adventures and you will meet with kindness. If you haven't got much money, or if you haven't done this, or you do, or you do, but you're a stranger in a strange land, and you will meet with kindness. So that's what I've learned about that. And then I went to Canada and I met Anne, and we were in Theatre Terrific. I was running this theatre company for disabled people. And again, it's the kindness amongst people who don't have much, and are facing their own little trials and tribulations and struggles and physical struggles and mental struggles and all this sort of struggle. It's the kindness that is shown to one another that keeps you going, that keeps people going and trying and surviving and having resilience and having hope and everything. And we performed for 25,000 children in schools around British Columbia. And it's that experience that you can share with people, and your creativity and your colorfulness and your spontaneity and the way you can improvise with the kids, and the way you can drama can do an incredible amount of good and to spread kindness and to spread awareness of other people's experience of life. Anyway, drama, theatre, drama, yes. And then Anne was just such a very kind person. And she drove the van around British Columbia and looked after the cast and was kind to people. And then when we came to England, she was very kind over here. She did shopping for people week after week. She did Anne's jab cab. She took them to all their inoculations and vaccinations and health checks and whatever. And during COVID, she was just a very kind person. And I want to recognize that because she was appreciated, very, very much appreciated. And we shared so many adventures together and looked after each other. Yes. And then pets. I just want to recognize the fact that my Alsatian laddie, when I was in secondary school, we had an Alsatian called Laddie, and he kindly allowed my pet mice to climb all over him because he knew that I valued my mice and I valued him. And he was very kind. I don't know what to say. Very tolerant. He was very kind anyway. And so when he accidentally succumbed to his hunting nature and chased sheep and brought one down, and the farmer came round and wanted to shoot him, and my dad arranged for him to go and be a guard dog with the RAF, so that saved his life. And the farmer said that was all right. But I just wanted to bring that in because it's that one person can have both sides in their nature, and it depends on circumstances as to which way you swing. Well, that's just the thought for the day. And then finally, after all this thinking about kindness, it really brings home to the fact that you have to be also kind to yourself in order to be kind to other people. So if you are coming from a place of kindness, then that kindness will spread. So do take care of yourself and take care of others so that you can take care of others. But then that's another question. Can you, from a very sad place within yourself, can you still be kind to others? And you probably can. Oh dear. So I just want to say kindness is very, very important in the world that we are trying to live in at the moment. And that's why I wanted to do this workshop, to bring these stories together.